When Thomas Carter asked Donald Trump for $1 outside his hotel that morning, the media called it a chance encounter. But as security cameras rolled and phones recorded, something more profound was unfolding, a moment that would redefine what it means to truly help someone in need. The morning seems like any other at Trump International Hotel. In the grand marble lobby, crystal chandeliers catch the early sunlight, while wealthy guests and business executives move through the revolving doors in a steady stream. Among the opulence stands Thomas Carter, a figure most try hard not to see. His cardboard sign, worn at the edges, tells a story in just 3 words. "Anything helps, please?" The hotel security shifts uncomfortably, their earpieces buzzing with activity. They've watched this man for hours, noting his careful distance from the entrance, his respectful nods to passing guests, his quiet dignity and desperation. Within minutes, the usual morning rhythm changes. The crowd begins to part, phones emerging from pockets and purses, all eyes drawn to the gold-trimmed entrance as Donald Trump appears, flanked by his ever-present security team. Thomas feels his heart race. He's rehearsed this moment countless times, lying awake on cold concrete, wondering if one small request might somehow change everything. "Mr. Trump," he calls out, his voice steady despite his trembling hands, "could you spare just $1? The lobby freezes. Security reaches for their earpieces. Trump stops mid-stride, his expression unreadable as he turns toward the voice. Phones rise higher, recording devices at the ready. No one moves. No one speaks. The entire lobby seems to hold its breath, waiting to see what happens next. Trump takes a single step forward, his eyes fixed on Thomas, and what he does next leaves everyone in the hotel speechless. $1? Trump says, his voice carrying across the now silent lobby. He studies Thomas's weathered face, taking in the man's worn clothes and tired eyes. The crowd watches, phones still recording, as Trump walks closer. "Tell me your story. How did you end up here?" Thomas swallows hard, his fingers gripping the cardboard sign tighter. "Lost my job at the steel mill last year, sir. 30 years I worked there. Then the medical bills came after my wife's cancer." His voice cracks slightly, but he stands straighter, maintaining his dignity. "I'm not looking for handouts. I just need a chance." The onlookers hold their breath, some already typing on their phones, preparing to share whatever happens next on social media. Security personnel remain tense, though Trump waves them back with a subtle gesture. He's focused entirely on Thomas now, as if the crowded lobby has faded away. $1 won't fix this," Trump says finally, reaching into his suit jacket. The crowd leans forward, phones raised higher, expecting him to pull out his wallet. Instead, he removes a business card and holds it out. "But maybe this will. Be at this address tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Thomas takes the card with trembling fingers, reading the address written in gold lettering. His eyes widen as Trump continues speaking, this time turning to address his head of security. Make sure he has a room here for tonight, and get him some proper clothes. Trump's voice carries the same authority he uses in board meetings, brooking no argument. The lobby erupts in whispers. Hotel guests pull out their phones, fingers flying as they share what they're witnessing. Security personnel exchange uncertain glances but begin moving to comply with their boss's unexpected orders. "Sir, I can't accept," Thomas begins, but Trump cuts him off with a raised hand. "You said you needed a chance. This is it. Don't waste it." Trump's expression remains unreadable, but there's something in his eyes that suggests this isn't just another publicity moment. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., we'll see what you're made of." Within minutes, the hotel staff springs into action. The head of security guides Thomas toward the elevator, while others discreetly gather his few possessions from outside. Guests whisper among themselves, some skeptical, others moved by what they've witnessed. A few even pull out their wallets, eager to contribute, but security politely waves them off. In the elevator, Thomas stares at the business card in his trembling hands. The address is for Trump's corporate offices, but it's the handwritten note beneath that catches his attention. "Ask for Maria. she'll know what to do. The gold lettering blurs as tears well in his eyes. As Thomas disappears into the elevator, Trump watches from the lobby. His phone buzzes incessantly. News of this encounter is already spreading across social media. But for once, he isn't thinking about the publicity. He's remembering something his father told him long ago about the true measure of success. The morning that started like any other has become anything but ordinary. And tomorrow at 9 a.m., both men's lives will change in ways neither could imagine. The suite they give Thomas takes his breath away. 2 rooms of polished marble and gleaming fixtures, with windows overlooking the city he spent months sleeping beneath. The bed alone is bigger than the last apartment he shared with his wife. If this story is touching your heart, make sure to like and subscribe for more inspiring moments of human kindness. A hotel staff member, Jennifer, arrives with pressed clothes and toiletries. She treats him with a kindness that makes his throat tight. "The barber will be here in an hour," she explains, laying out a charcoal gray suit. "And room service will bring dinner whenever you're ready." Social media explodes with the story. Videos of the encounter flood Twitter and Instagram, each with its own interpretation. Some praise Trump's unexpected compassion, others cynically label it a publicity stunt. The clips show the same scene from different angles, the moment when everything changed with a simple request for $1. In his penthouse office, Trump sits at his desk reviewing a file that Maria, his longtime assistant, has compiled. Thomas Carter's history unfolds in neat paragraphs. 30 years at the steel mill, perfect attendance record, employee of the month multiple times. Then the layoffs came. His wife's cancer diagnosis followed shortly after. Medical bills mounted, savings disappeared. A life carefully built over decades crumbled in months. Trump remembers his father's words from years ago. Sometimes a man doesn't need charity, he needs a chance to rebuild his dignity. Fred Trump had built his empire helping working-class families find homes. He understood that everyone deserves an opportunity to start again. As evening falls, Thomas stands before the bathroom mirror, barely recognizing himself. The barber has worked magic, trimming his beard and styling his hair. The suit fits perfectly, but it's his eyes that have changed the most. There's hope there now, replacing the dull resignation of recent months. He orders dinner from room service, his hands shaking as he signs the bill. The young server smiles warmly, treating him like any other guest. For the first time in months, Thomas feels human again. In his pocket, the business card seems to burn with possibility. He takes it out, reading the address again. Trump Corporate Offices, 9 a.m. What waits for him there? A job? Help? Or just another disappointment in a long string of them? Outside his window, the city lights twinkle like stars. Somewhere out there, on those same streets, others like him are preparing for another cold night. The guilt of his sudden good fortune weighs heavy. Hours pass as Thomas tries to sleep in the impossibly soft bed. His mind races with questions. Why him? Why today? What made Trump stop instead of walking past like so many others? Meanwhile, in Trump's home office, preparations continue late into the night. Maria coordinates with various department heads, setting things in motion. Trump's plan is ambitious, but he's never been one to think small. Morning approaches, bringing with it the promise of change and the weight of expectations. In just a few hours, Thomas will walk into Trump's office, not knowing that his request for $1 has already set in motion events that will affect not just his life, but the lives of countless others. At precisely 8:45 a.m., Thomas steps into the gleaming lobby of Trump's corporate offices. The security guard, already briefed about his arrival, offers a respectful nod and directs him to the executive elevator. His polished shoes, provided by the hotel, click against the marble floor with each step. Maria meets him on the top floor. Her efficient demeanor softens when she sees his nervous fidgeting with the suit cuffs. "Mr. Trump is waiting," she says, leading him down a corridor lined with photos of Trump's various projects around the world. "But first, there's something you should see." She guides him into a conference room where a large screen displays a social media feed. Videos of yesterday's encounter have gone viral, accumulating millions of views overnight. Comments flood in from across the globe, but one catches Thomas's eye. "My father lost everything in 2008. Someone gave him a chance, and that chance saved our family. Hope this man gets his chance too." Trump enters without ceremony, his presence immediately filling the room. "You're early," he says, approval evident in his tone. "Good. We have a lot to discuss." He gestures toward the screen. "Your story has touched people, Thomas, but what matters now is what you'll do with this opportunity." For the next hour, Trump outlines his proposal. It's not charity, it's a challenge. "I'm launching a new initiative," he explains, spreading architectural plans across the conference table. "Transitional housing and job training centers, starting right here in New York, and I want you to help build it." Thomas stares at the plans, his construction experience from the steel mill already noting the practical challenges. Trump continues, "You know what it's like out there. You understand what people need better than any consultant I could hire. I'm offering you a position as project advisor, with a salary to match." The salary figure Trump names makes Thomas's knees weak. But it's not the money that brings tears to his eyes. It's the realization that his experiences, even the painful ones, might help others avoid the same fate. "There's more," Trump adds, sliding over a folder. Inside, Thomas finds medical insurance paperwork already processed and approved. It's retroactive, your wife's medical bills. They're taken care of. Thomas's hands shake as he reads the documents. After months of collection notices and mounting debt, the weight lifting from his shoulders is almost physical. "I don't know what to say," he manages. "Say you'll work as hard at this as you did at the steel mill," Trump responds. "This isn't a handout, Thomas. It's an investment, in you and in every person you'll help through this project." As Trump outlines the next steps, Maria brings in the project team, architects, social workers, and financial advisors. Each has been carefully selected, and Thomas recognizes something in their eyes, genuine commitment to making this work. By noon, Thomas's head spins with information and possibilities. They've scheduled meetings with city officials, planned site visits to potential locations, and set up training sessions to bring him up to speed on project management software. "One more thing," Trump says as the meeting wraps up. He reaches into his desk and pulls out a dollar bill. "You asked for this yesterday." He holds it out, but when Thomas reaches for it, Trump doesn't let go. "Keep it as a reminder. Sometimes asking for help is the bravest thing we can do." Outside the office, the story continues to spread. News outlets pick up the viral videos, running segments about the encounter and speculating about Trump's plans. But inside this room, something more personal and profound is taking shape. As Thomas leaves the office that afternoon, carrying a briefcase filled with documents and responsibilities, he pauses in the lobby. Through the glass doors, he can see the spot where he stood just yesterday, asking for $1. Now, 24 hours later, he's not just received help, he's been given the tools to help others. 2 weeks into the project, the real challenges begin to surface. Thomas sits in his new office, surrounded by stacks of proposals and city regulations. The transition from homeless to executive advisor hasn't been smooth. Social media trolls question his qualifications. Some tabloids dig into his past, looking for scandal. A particularly vicious article suggests this is all an elaborate publicity stunt, with Thomas as an unwitting pawn in Trump's game. The pressure builds when city officials push back against the proposed locations for the transitional housing centers. "Not in my backyard" becomes a common refrain at community board meetings. Thomas watches wealthy residents argue against helping the very people he lived alongside just weeks ago. Trump calls an emergency meeting after the third location falls through. "They're fighting us at every turn," he says, pacing the conference room. The project team looks defeated, but Thomas stands up, surprising everyone. "Let me speak to them," he says, "not as your advisor, but as someone who knows what it's like out there." His voice carries a conviction that makes even Trump pause. They need to understand this isn't about property values. It's about saving lives. Trump studies him for a moment, then nods. Set it up, he tells Maria. Town hall meeting prime time. Let's make sure everyone hears this. The announcement goes out, and media attention intensifies. Critics claim Trump is exploiting Thomas's story. Supporters praise the initiative's transparency. Through it all, Thomas works late into the night preparing his speech, determined to prove the critics wrong. His wife Sarah, now receiving proper medical care, worries about the strain. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she says during one of his rare evenings at home. The insurance coverage has already made a difference. Her color is better, her spirit stronger. "I have to make this work," Thomas replies, reviewing his notes again. "Not just for us, but for everyone still out there." The night of the town hall arrives. The hotel ballroom fills with an uneasy mix of wealthy residents, community leaders, and media. Thomas spots a group of homeless individuals in the back, people he used to know from the streets, invited at his insistence. Trump introduces him simply, "This man asked me for $1. Instead, I asked him to help change lives. Listen to what he has to say." Thomas approaches the podium, his heart pounding. Camera lights flash as he adjusts the microphone. The room falls silent, waiting. "3 weeks ago, I was invisible," he begins. "Just another face on the street you tried not to see." His voice starts soft but grows stronger. "I'm not here to make you feel guilty. I'm here to show you what's possible when we stop looking away." He walks them through the project plans, not with an executive's polish but with the raw honesty of someone who's lived the problem. He shares stories of the people he met on the streets, the former teacher who lost everything to medical debt, the veteran struggling with PTSD, the single mother living in her car between shifts at 2 jobs. "These centers aren't just buildings," he explains. "They're lifelines. Every person who finds their way back through these doors is someone's parent, someone's child, someone's neighbor." The room shifts. Even the staunchest opponents seem affected by his words. Trump watches from the side, a slight smile playing at his lips. But then comes the question they've been dreading. A prominent real estate developer stands up. "This is all very touching, but who's going to pay for it? Our tax dollars? Our property values?" Thomas doesn't hesitate. Mr. Trump isn't asking for tax dollars. He's investing his own money, and he's challenged other developers to match it. He pauses, then adds, "As for property values, let me ask you this. What's the cost of doing nothing? How many more lives have to fall apart before we decide it's worth helping?" The developer sits down, but the tension in the room remains palpable. Then, something unexpected happens. One of the homeless men in the back stands up. "I've known Thomas," he says, his voice shaking. "He shared what little he had with others even when he had nothing. If he says this will work, I believe him." Others begin to stand, community members, business owners, even some of the original opponents. The mood in the room transforms from skepticism to cautious support. Trump steps forward, seizing the moment. "We're not just building shelters," he announces. "We're building second chances. Every person in this room has the opportunity to be part of that. Who's with us?" Hands rise across the ballroom. Commitments begin to flow. Donations, volunteers, support from local businesses. The project that seemed stalled suddenly has new life. After the meeting, Trump pulls Thomas aside. "You did more tonight than any professional consultant could have done," he says. "But the real work starts now. Are you ready?" Thomas looks across the room, where Sarah is chatting with some of the community members who've offered to help. His old friends from the street are being interviewed by reporters. Finally visible, finally heard. "I'm ready," he answers. "But I have one request." Thomas's request sends ripples through the entire project. "I want to hire them," he tells Trump, gesturing to his former street companions. "Not just as workers, but as consultants. They know what we need better than anyone." Trump's advisors immediately object. The liability issues alone could sink the project. But Trump holds up his hand, studying Thomas's determined expression. "Tell me more." Over the next month, the project transforms. Thomas brings in James, a former accountant who lost everything in the 2008 crash. Maria, a domestic violence survivor who lived in her car while working 2 jobs. Robert, an Iraq War veteran whose PTSD made holding a steady job impossible. Each brings unique insights to the project. James scrutinizes the budgets, finding cost-effective solutions. Maria designs family-friendly spaces that prioritize safety and privacy. Robert develops security protocols that balance protection with dignity. But not everyone supports this unconventional approach. Major donors threaten to pull out. Conservative media outlets run skeptical headlines. Trump's homeless experiment, bold vision, or costly mistake. The pressure intensifies when a prominent business magazine publishes an exposé. They've dug into Thomas's past, revealing old debts and a brief stint in jail for sleeping in an abandoned building. The article questions Trump's judgment in trusting him with such responsibility. Sarah finds Thomas in his office late one night, staring at the article. "Maybe they're right," he says, his voice heavy. "Maybe I'm in over my head." Trump calls an emergency meeting the next morning. The project team fills the conference room, tension thick in the air. Thomas braces for the worst, expecting to be asked to step down. Instead, Trump tosses the magazine aside. "You know what makes America great?" he asks the room. Second chances. Thomas didn't just ask for $1 that day, he asked for an opportunity to prove himself. And that's exactly what we're going to give everyone involved in this project. He turns to Thomas. "Your past. That's your strength. It's why you understand this better than anyone else in this room." His voice carries the same conviction it did the day he first offered Thomas the job. The team rallies. James presents innovative funding solutions. Maria shows designs for a childcare center within the facility. Robert outlines a peer support program for veterans. But the real test comes when city inspectors arrive. They comb through every detail, looking for any reason to deny permits. Thomas walks with them, answering questions, explaining innovations, defending every decision. The lead inspector pauses in what will become the job training center. "You really think this will work?" he asks skeptically. Thomas points to his team members, each now dressed in business attire, confidently discussing their areas of expertise. "It already is working," he replies. "Look at them. A month ago, society had written them off. Now they're helping build something that will change lives." The inspector makes notes, face unreadable. The team holds their breath, knowing everything hinges on his approval. Later that evening, Trump receives the inspector's preliminary report. The room falls silent as he reads it. Thomas stands by the window, watching the city lights flicker on, remembering nights spent searching for safe places to sleep. Trump finally looks up, his expression unreadable. "They want to make this a model program," he announces. "If it works here, they'll fast-track permits for similar projects across the city." The room erupts in celebration, but Thomas doesn't move from his spot by the window. Trump joins him there, following his gaze to the streets below. "Having second thoughts?" Trump asks quietly. "No," Thomas replies. "Just thinking about how much $1 can change when it's invested in people instead of just handed out." 6 months later, opening day approaches. The transformed building stands as a beacon of hope in the heart of the city. But beneath the fresh paint and new fixtures, tension builds. National media descends on New York. Critics call it Trump's PR stunt. Supporters hail it as a revolution in addressing homelessness. Through it all, Thomas and his team work tirelessly, knowing their true test lies ahead. The morning before the opening, disaster strikes. A pipe bursts on the 3rd floor, flooding several newly furnished rooms. Contractors estimate repairs will take weeks. Postponing the opening would devastate the hundreds of people waiting for help. Thomas gathers his team, the same people who once lived on the streets with him. "We've got 24 hours, he announces. "We can fix this ourselves." They work through the night. James coordinates with suppliers for emergency materials. Maria reorganizes room assignments to accommodate the damage. Robert mobilizes a volunteer crew from his veteran support group. Trump arrives at dawn, finding them still working. He watches silently as Thomas directs the effort, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, leading by example just as he did on the streets. The press is already gathering outside. Trump says finally, "We can postpone if we need to." Thomas wipes sweat from his forehead, considering the implications. A delay would fuel the critics, potentially jeopardizing plans for future centers. But rushing could risk everything they've built. He looks at his team former homeless individuals now standing tall, proud of what they've accomplished. "Give us 3 more hours," he decides. Trump nods, understanding this is about more than just meeting a deadline. It's about proving what's possible when people are given a real chance. The team races against time. Water damage is repaired, walls repainted, furniture rearranged. Every person who enters the building will find dignity, hope, and opportunity, just as Thomas did that morning at the hotel. As the final hour approaches, Thomas stands in the lobby holding the framed dollar bill Trump gave him months ago. The inscription reads, "Sometimes the smallest request can lead to the biggest changes." Outside, cameras flash as the crowd gathers. Inside, a new family of unlikely heroes prepares to open their doors to others seeking their own second chances. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Together, we can spread hope one story at a time. Drop a comment below. What would you do if someone asked you for $1 today?